So I got some roses. Most of my items are from Shein or Walmart. I didn't end up using those roses. I got a variety of laces, some glue. I ended up using this pen for the, oh my god, and then headbands, as well as this muslin cloth to write on and cardstock. So for inspiration, this was the first one. I really liked the rhinestones, but to match my dress, I decided to use pearls instead. And then for my second inspiration, it would be this one right here. Third inspiration was this one, mainly the corset area where she essentially wrote love letters to herself. I'm just grabbing the muslin fabric here that I got from Walmart, just 2 yards of it, and then get your cardstock. So in total, I spent about $60 decorating my cap, but to me, I felt like that was okay because I never got the chance to do that in high school, and I also wanted to create a memorable moment for me and my family. I was just deciding how much paper I would need. I essentially used this to be a stabilizer for the muslin fabric. Eventually, I decided to do 2. I was just trying to see how to arrange the papers. I ended up doing it this way, where I would tape those parts together. Since this cardstock was a little small and I had to arrange it a certain way, if I did it this way, I would have had that excess. I'm gonna go ahead and just measure where the place where your tassel would be at. So I just started stabbing the area just to get an idea of where to put or to cut at. This is how it ended up looking like. It ended up being a little too small, so if you do have an X-Acto knife, it would have been best to use it at this point. To fix it, I just used this highlighter. I use a specific highlighter because it has an erasable tip. So just go ahead and trace out the tassel area so that you can have a better fit to it. Now it fits a little better compared to what it did before. Even though it looks a little whack, it's okay because the edges will be wrapped up in the muslin fabric. Just go ahead and start taping the paper together. I just taped the ugly side first normally, and then the pretty side I use kind of like that double-sided or ringlet type of tape. This part is my mistake here. If you are going to do this same method, go ahead and have your paper a little bit past the cap, because I found that once I started adding my side pieces, it just didn't look as good bird's eye view. And when you actually start cutting the paper, go ahead and give yourself at least a few centimeters to your cap, just so that you could have a little bit more leeway. To keep the paper together, I just used some binder clips so that it could be as exact as possible. You can go ahead and clean up the edges, but if you don't really care, and if you're going to go ahead and wrap it in fabric anyway, then it doesn't necessarily matter. I decided to add another layer of cardstock just because the first layer was a little flimsy, so I just went ahead and did the very first steps, which is connecting 2 cardstocks together. I clipped them together so that they could again be exact, and all I'm doing now is just taping all the parts that lift up so that when I'm cutting it, nothing misaligns. And then of course cut it to shape. Just doing the tassel part again by using the highlighter to go ahead and trace the opening. I decided to do this method where I just use the scissors to stab 4 points and then one in the middle so that I can kind of cut it out like pizza triangles. Or not pizza triangles, I just thought that this method would be easier to cut out. Just making sure that it fit around that tassel area, I just used the highlighter to stab it in, but you can use whatever tool so you can have a better idea of how much more to cut. The second layer ended up looking much better than the first one, so this ended up being my pretty layer. To glue both the papers together, I just used super glue, but you can even use the Gorilla Glue that I showed in the very beginning. Just double check that, make sure both layers snugly fit or is able to fit around the tassel area, and then we can go ahead and start wrapping it in muslin fabric. My process when wrapping muslin fabric was to have, I think this is about 3-4 inches of extra fabric, just so that I could have more leeway. And to glue it together, I found that using the Gorilla Glue was much better compared to the super glue. Just know that when you are pressing it down, it kind of spreads around, so I just used some scissors to make sure it's spread as evenly as possible, but I even ended up using the bottom part or the folded part of the glue so that it was evenly spread onto the fabric and it didn't have any of those weird bumps. On the edges, I tried to make it as tight as possible so that it looked clean when I put it on top of my cap, but I would recommend to keep it a little loose so that if you were to do the same method as me when you're sewing on the pearls later on, it has some fabric to hook onto. I tried my best not to sew it onto the cap itself or the lace. You can even do this method where I just place various dots on each part of the fabric, so I tried to go outer to inner so that I was able to get more of a secure fit of the fabric onto the cardstock. The fabric around the actual tassel area, I just tried to make space by kind of cutting out a square or rectangle. Bottom part, I tried to make it look as seamless as possible, so I'm doing this in thirds, I guess you could say. So I just did the same method of doing the circling dots. Oh, not even thirds, I did it in half. But this is, again, what you want to do is go ahead and make sure you pull the fabric as tight as possible if you want that clean look and if you're not putting anything on the sides. One thing I would do is not glue all the edges together, especially on the sides of the grad cap, because again, you're gonna need that extra fabric to sew on the extra decorations onto your cap. Now the tassel area, I just went ahead and made kind of like these pizza slice cuts onto the circle. So what I did was just cut the middle, just kind of like when you fold paper and then when you cut the middle it kind of has like a slit. So I went ahead and did that, and then just cut each side to eventually make a pizza slice. To glue it down together, I went ahead and used the Gorilla Glue again along with these pair of tweezers. I did try it with the super glue, but the super glue and fabric just does not work. So the Gorilla Glue was my lifesaver on here. And you want to go ahead and just glue down the fabric as best as you can. Sometimes it did break, or it does lift up, so you would need to hold it down just a few seconds, or at least let the glue get tacky a little bit. But I was impatient, I just glued it down. You can go ahead and just use the other end of the tweezers to just smooth out the glue a little bit. To make sure the pizza slices do not lift up, took extra fabric that I had and laid it on top of those slices so that it has just extra security. Now is the decoration time. I decided to do this type of layout. Thank you to my fiance for helping me decide on this type of design. Again, I tried using the super glue, but just ignore that at all. Before I placed the designs on top, I wanted to make sure that I really did fit onto the tassel area. I did find that it was a snug fit, so I just went ahead and pressed down by using various tools like the highlighter, the tweezers, whatever I had to just make sure it, fit. The tweezers did end up working the best. At this point, I just decided to start gluing the actual fabric cap that we just made onto the cap itself. To glue down the lace, I just did it in increments, and I used the tweezers to just smooth out the glue because it was just go through the lace, obviously, because there's a lot of holes. With the second lace, the one that had more texture, I really wanted the middle part to be flat because I knew I wanted to put pearls on top. So that was my goal. Again, do it in increments and then just slowly start to spread the lace together or apart because this specific one was more scrunched up, and with this glue, again, you want to make sure it dries completely, so these binder clips were very helpful during this project. I'm just deciding how I wanted the roses to be arranged. Again, I did not end up using this because when I was testing it out, it just did not give enough space for my friends and family to write messages. So I just scrapped that idea and I ended up using my friend's circuit to create those roses. And right here I'm just showing you that my idea was to put pearls along the middle. Back to my inspiration post, they have this little pendant on each corner. The original person did have it on each corner and then in the middle of those corners, if that makes sense. I wanted to kind of emulate it, so I went ahead and bought some earrings to kind of give that similar look. I was just testing out to see how it would look on the corners, and it looked magnificent. These are the pearls that I ended up using to create that dangling effect from corner to corner. And then these pearls was the one that I put in between that textured lace because again I wanted it to kind of emulate this specific inspiration photo. I was deciding on whether or not if I wanted it to look exactly like the picture where I would have the teddy bear plus the bows. Ended up scrapping the teddy bear because again I wanted my families to write messages for me. And then these little pearls, I wanted to put it around that black area where the tassel would be. I ended up not doing it because I completely forgot, but I think that would have made the cap a little bit more cohesive. This is just a rough draft for like just me thinking of how I wanted it to look. Like I said, I wanted the pearls on the edges. Just look at that. Beautiful. And again, I wanted the roses to be in this type of orientation, but as you can see, if I were to keep it with these specific roses, my family would only have this amount of space to be writing, and just having 3 roses to me looked a little funny, even if you were to add the baby's breath onto there. Gluing on the actual earring / pendant areas, again, I just used the Gorilla Glue, and this is the part where I was really regretting not having enough space because I really wanted it to be sleek and smooth and clean, but because of this I didn't have a lot of room to really glue the pendant or to sew the pearl jewelry, which I'll show in a little bit. But thankfully, since this is an earring, it's only like, a thin rod going into the cap, but the nozzle on the Gorilla Glue was the difficult part. So just leave a little bit of space on those corners. And then again, these binder clips really be saving my life. This is when I learned that I did not buy enough earrings. I originally got 6 when I needed 8. Thankfully I had enough for the corners, and thankfully I was happy enough with having 1 pair of earrings on each corner, and it ended up working out fine. So here's just me showing you how I attached these specific pearls onto the cap. I ended up sewing it, you can see the thread behind, and what I did was the very first pearl, I attached it to one of the corners on the earrings, and the bigger pearls I had about 3 in between each part I sewed on. It worked during the first corner, but then the more you went on, it just ended up looking weird. And then whenever I reached the pendant area, instead of putting the pearl around, I just went underneath and this kind of, again, messed up the orientation of the 3 bigger pearls in between. It ended up working fine anyways, but this is the type of pattern I was trying to emulate across the board. I did end up running out the first one, so thankfully I got a second one. So luckily I think I ended up at a corner, so I just followed the 3 big pearl methods again. And this is just a final look of how everything looked like with the pendant, with the pearl string, and then the rest of my ideas I would have done with my friends. This is the thread color I use. You can use white if you want, but I tried to use something a little bit more earthy-ish color, or more taupe, just something more natural looking, because I think white would have looked way too stark with all this cream and beige type of colors. So if you have something like that, go ahead and use it, but ultimately you can also just match it to your cap color, or just match it to whatever else you want. I did not try using glue with the pearls or the string pearls that I made the stringing thing look, because you would have had to hold it in place for a bit for it to cure, and also if it gets yanked out during the ceremony or any point between the making to the ceremony, it would have ruined the whole thing. Luckily, this specific pearl string was fairly easy to cut, so I just used some scissors to cut it. And then here's just a demo of how I actually sewed the pearl string on. This is just a new string because, like I said, I finished the other one. So I'm just gonna start it off. Since I do have some tape on here, or not tape, glue, it's gonna make it a little harder. So you can start it off by pulling through here, the grand cap, and then what I did next was I grabbed the ending part, okay, grab the ending and then just loop it through. Still, I would say hold on to the ending part, because I might have made a mistake to not do that. Then we're gonna go ahead and make this connection. And then I'm just gonna do one more loop and then I'll seal it off. One more loop. It's harder to push through the glue, so try to be mindful of the glue that you use on the edges. Trim it, and you're good to go. So since I did start off a new, I guess, strip of pearls, I'm gonna go ahead and just follow the same pattern. So 3 of the bigger pearls, then I'll use this middle pearl in, of course, the middle. So what I do, if your nails are long enough, you can essentially hook it on your nail like this, and then just try to see if it's in the middle or not. And if it is, I don't know if you can see completely, but there are, can you see this? Anyways, you can see how there's like that gold chain. There are some hoops around the pearls, so I just start sewing on the closest hoop, either the second closest hoop or the closest hoop that there is. This time I'm gonna try to, well, first, just to anchor it, I'm gonna try to put it here as close to the muslin as I can. If I get it through the lace, I get it through the lace, but the goal is to make it somewhat seamless. And then I'm gonna make a second securing knot. I can't even see. The second one I pull a little tighter. So this next step is an optional step, but you can wrap it around the pearl like this if you're able to. For me to do so, just grab whatever hoop you did on the other side and essentially copy it on to here. Okay, so I officially finished my grad cap. I just have this excess that I have to cut. So I'm gonna show you guys how I did that last time. And I'm gonna cut the next pearl, so the space between the one I just sewed and the next pearl. Difficult to show, but I'll try my best to show it. I'm gonna go ahead and just snip. Oh, what the fuck? It came out. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and sew it again, because I guess I didn't reinforce it enough. Or I might just cut where I need to finish at. So I'm gonna end with my same rule. I'm gonna end with the middle loop. Now I officially finished my grad cap. This is my graduation cap. I really love this design. I love how personalized I made this cap to be. Is this working? Oh, perfect. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope it was able to inspire some sort of creativeness in you, whatever you want to say. But yes, boy.